Hello and welcome to the DVD Shelf Top Spots, the countdown show where entertainment is celebrated, not incinerated. I'm your host David Rose, and to commemorate the recent release of the Lego Batman movie, this episode will be dedicated to my top 10 favorite animated films featuring The Dark Knight. To think, we're living in an age now where we have been treated to so many different animated versions of the legendary hero that picking 10 favorites only barely scratches the surface of what all is out there. Of course, he has also shown up in various Justice League features over the years, but the following list will only cover animated movies where Batman is front and center, as I briefly discuss what makes each one worth seeking out. So, without further ado, let's swing into action with the number 10 spot, which is actually a three-way tie between a trio of animated films that comprise the Damian Wayne Trilogy: 2014's Son of Batman, 2015's Batman vs. Robin, and 2016's Batman Bad Blood. Loosely based on the acclaimed comic book story arcs Batman and Son from 2006, written by Grant Morrison, and The Court of Owls from 2011, created by Scott Snyder, this series of films introduces us to Damian Wayne, the illegitimate son Bruce Wayne never knew he had.
Don't look so stunned, Father. I thought you'd be taller.
Damian was raised among the League of Assassins by his mother Talia al Ghul and his grandfather, the infamous global terrorist Ra's al Ghul. But when Damian is brought to Gotham and left in the hands of his biological father, he and Bruce's father-son relationship is off to a rocky start, with Damian's staunch loyalty to the League of Assassins, along with his outspoken brashness and bratty attitude. However, Bruce sympathizes with his son's constant struggle between being a trained killer and being an effective hero, so he takes him under his wing as the new Robin. Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin, and Batman Bad Blood all work rather well as standalone films, but watching them back to back is a much more satisfying experience. I feel like there are a fair amount of fans out there that don't really care for these films that much because of how many creative liberties they take with the source material. But as someone who hasn't really kept up with the modern comics these films are based on, that doesn't really bother me too much. I actually found them to be highly enjoyable, with great action choreography, some genuinely surprising plot twists, quality animation that packs quite a punch, some great moments of humor, and solid voice acting. If you ask me, I'd say Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin, and Batman Bad Blood are pretty underrated and definitely worth your time.
Of course, I know that.
Coming in at number 9 is Batman Year One, the 2011 adaptation of the 1987 graphic novel written by Frank Miller with artwork by David Mazzucchelli. As the name obviously implies, Year One chronicles the entire first year of Bruce Wayne's journey to becoming the Dark Guardian of Gotham City, as we follow Lieutenant James Gordon long before he would become the city's admired police commissioner and one of Batman's most trusted allies. Motivated by the tragic murder of his wealthy parents, young Bruce's crime-fighting crusade begins in earnest once he returns home to Gotham after 12 years of traveling abroad, educating himself in forensic science, and becoming a highly skilled martial artist. But while he attempts to use these traits to take down street thugs and mob bosses, he realizes that something is still missing. Meanwhile, decorated police officer James Gordon is transferred to Gotham from the Chicago PD and has just moved into town with his pregnant wife Barbara. However, Gordon is in for a rude awakening as he quickly realizes that Gotham's police force is infested with corrupt cops and mob ties. After several months on the job, Gordon becomes aware of a shadowy figure who has taken it upon himself to bring down Gotham's criminal element, but Gordon remains skeptical that this masked vigilante can be trusted. Frank Miller's original Year One graphic novel was one of the main inspirations for the highly successful Batman Begins, the blockbuster origin film that rebooted the long-dormant Batman film franchise. And because this well-made 2011 animated film is a direct adaptation of Miller's Year One, there are a number of similarities to Batman Begins. The film features a stellar voice cast headlined by Bryan Cranston as Gordon and Ben McKenzie as Bruce Wayne. McKenzie would in turn go on to portray young Jim Gordon on the popular crime series Gotham, a loose prequel to the Batman mythos. Combine the great voice work with slick animation that successfully emulates artist David Mazzucchelli's original comic panels, and you have one hell of a strong adaptation of an iconic origin tale.
None of you are safe.
The number 8 spot goes to the brand spanking new theatrical release, the Lego Batman movie.
Finally.
Back in 2014, we got the Lego Movie. A film that when it was first announced was naturally brushed off by many as nothing more than some cynical corporate cash grab made solely to sell a bunch of toys. But surprisingly, the Lego Movie turned out to be a funny and charming epic that became a global box office hit and one of the best animated films of the year. The creative set pieces, an unexpected self-aware sense of humor, and a slew of cameos from random pop culture figures cleverly put forth the idea that what you're essentially watching is literally just a kid playing with Legos, and that feeling is carried right over into the Lego Batman movie. With an over-the-top grovelly voice hilariously provided by Will Arnett, this boastful and self-obsessed Dark Knight first appeared in the Lego Movie and stole every scene he was in. Arnett plays Batman as an oblivious blowhard who is more than aware of the fact that he is such an amazing and beloved superhero, which is a pretty interesting approach when it comes to parodying Batman's iconic personality traits. The film itself was just as beautifully animated as the first Lego Movie, and when it comes to the high volume of rapid-fire sight gags and obscure references, it's a dream come true for any Bat fan. If I had any nitpicks though, it would be that the film does occasionally stray into typical kid movie territory, probably more so than the original Lego Movie did. But that doesn't keep it from being a highly entertaining, very funny, and heartfelt tribute to Batman's nearly 80-year history. Definitely check it out while it's still in theaters.
So enjoy it. Batman out.
Number 7 brings us the Batman-Superman movie from 1997, the first of what will be many entries on this list from the classic run of Batman and Superman animated shows from the 90s. It all started in 1992 with the groundbreaking Batman the Animated Series, which ended its original run in 1995, but it wasn't long before that same creative team, led by producer and lead show designer Bruce Timm, was off creating a follow-up series for Superman, which premiered in 1996 with a style that was similar to Batman, but clearly much brighter in color and more angular and streamlined. In 1997, the success of Superman led to the production of more Batman episodes, but so the style could fit better with their brighter and sharper Superman style, every Batman character was redesigned from the ground up. Now, Batman and Superman could share the same universe, and in the fall of '97, during Superman's second season, the Man of Steel and the Dark Knight met for the first time in this animated continuity, which originally aired on TV as a 3-part episode entitled World's Finest, but was later released on home video under the title The Batman-Superman Movie. As you'd expect from these classic animated DC shows, this is a brilliant team-up story that really understands its characters. Naturally, Batman and Superman initially butt heads and mildly antagonize each other, but soon team up to fight off an unexpected alliance that has been formed between Lex Luthor and the Joker, with their hench girls Harley Quinn and Mercy Graves in tow. Along the way, newspaper journalist Lois Lane has become smitten with Bruce Wayne, which doesn't sit too well with her mild-mannered co-worker, Clark Kent. And of course, all the iconic voice actors are here. Kevin Conroy's definitive Batman, Tim Daly as Superman, Clancy Brown's distinguished and intimidating Lex Luthor, and of course the one and only Mark Hamill as the Joker. Now, because this film originated as a 3-part episode of the Superman animated series, it isn't quite as cinematic as many of the other entries on this list, but that's hardly a deal breaker. In fact, if you're not a fan of the tone or the handling of the characters in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, then this is definitely the Batman-Superman team-up film for you.
Blah, blah, blah.
Staying within this same Batman animated universe is our number 6 spot, the 1998 direct-to-video film Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero. First appearing in comics during the 50s under the name Mr. Zero, Mr. Freeze rose to prominence when he appeared in 3 episodes of the 60s Batman TV series, each time played by a different actor. But it wasn't until the 1992 animated series came along when Mr. Freeze was transformed from a silly, gimmicky stock villain into a captivating and tragic figure. Dr. Victor Freeze was a cryogenic scientist for GothCorp, who had been keeping his beloved wife Nora in a state of cryostasis as he desperately attempts to find a cure for her terminal illness. He is then confronted by the slimy Goth Corp CEO, who informs him that funding for his work is being immediately cut off, and he shuts down Freeze's operation, leaving his wife to die. During a struggle, Freeze is pushed into beakers of cryogenic chemicals and presumed dead, only to return as the chemically mutated criminal Mr. Freeze as he seeks revenge and remains hell-bent on finding a cure for his wife. The gripping origin story was created by series writer Paul Dini, whose script won the show's first of 4 Emmy Awards, and it has stuck with the Mr. Freeze character in comics and various other media ever since. In 1997, Warner Brothers tapped the Batman animation team to create Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, a direct-to-video feature that was to tie in with the release of their summer blockbuster, Batman and Robin. But when the film turned into an epic critical and commercial disaster, Sub-Zero's release was postponed until March of 1998. Needless to say, as a Mr. Freeze story, and as a film in general, Sub-Zero is superior to Batman and Robin in every conceivable way. Freeze continues to desperately search for a cure to save his dying wife, but her condition has now deteriorated so much, the only way she could possibly be saved now is through an organ transplant. With Nora's blood type being extremely rare, the best possible match is Barbara Gordon, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon, who moonlights as Batgirl. So Freeze kidnaps Barbara, and the dynamic duo have to frantically race against the clock to save her. Of course, the voice acting is great, with most of the cast returning from the animated series, including the late Michael Ansara, whose performance as Mr. Freeze is nothing short of chilling. My only real nitpick is that some of the dated CGI just doesn't quite mesh well with the classic hand-drawn style, which is a tad distracting at times, but it's only a minor gripe. Other than that, Sub-Zero perfectly follows up the Mr. Freeze storyline from his 2 memorable appearances in Batman the Animated Series, and also gives it some bittersweet and emotional closure. If you have access to Batman the Animated Series, I highly suggest checking out the classic episodes Heart of Ice and Deep Freeze before going into Sub-Zero in order to fully experience what is quite possibly the greatest Mr. Freeze story ever told.
We're going to finish this!
The number 5 spot belongs to Batman: Return of the Caped Crusaders, a wildly fun and entertaining tribute to the Batman of the swingin' 60s that reunites classic dynamic duo Adam West and Burt Ward. We have the campy 60s TV series to thank for why Batman is still around today. The comics industry was dying out, but this classic, colorful satire turned Batman and Robin into pop icons, with superheroics that thrilled kids and self-aware humor that amused their parents. Years later, when Batman got darker and much more serious, the old TV series was shamed for its cheesiness. But it's sort of funny how these things tend to circle back around again. In recent years, the popularity of the classic show has gotten to be about as high as it ever was. Some decades-long legal troubles between Fox, DC Comics, and Warner Brothers were evidently sorted out, and not only did we start to see gaggles of 60s Batman merchandise and a line of comics start to hit store shelves, but we finally got the highly demanded and much anticipated home media release of the complete series for the first time ever in 2014. Now, reunions of everyone's favorite campy Caped Crusaders, Adam West and Burt Ward, are nothing new. It happened in the 70s in animation and live action, it's happened on The Simpsons, and it even happened in the fun 2003 made-for-TV movie Return to the Batcave. But 2016's Return of the Caped Crusaders is something special. Out of all the other West and Ward reunions, it felt like the most genuine extension of the original TV series. Needless to say, it nails the campy tone, and while sure, West and Ward's voices are clearly older, they bring a fun energy that takes you right back to the old show. Julie Newmar is also fantastic in her return to the iconic role of Catwoman. Unfortunately, the other actors have since passed away, but the impersonators that were chosen to fill in for Cesar Romero's Joker, Burgess Meredith's Penguin, and Frank Gorshin's Riddler are all quite convincing. Plus, fans of all things Batman can appreciate not only the little gags and references from the original series itself, but also from other forms of Batman media as well.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
It's all the comedy and campiness you'd expect from the old TV series, with some cool modern twists that make Return of the Caped Crusaders another Batman film worth seeking out.
Wholly unsatisfying ending.
Coming in at number 4 is Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. By the late 90s, the original run of Batman the Animated Series was coming to a close, but that same creative group was interested in bringing the Dark Knight into the next millennium with a new series, Batman Beyond, which took place in the same continuity as Batman the Animated Series, only 40 years in the future. Bruce Wayne, now too old to put on the Batsuit, has taken on a young apprentice, Terry McGinnis, to continue his fight against crime in Gotham. Probably my favorite thing to come out of Batman Beyond was the direct-to-video tie-in film Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. We knew that by this point in time, Batman's arch-enemy the Joker was long dead, but we never knew exactly how it happened, and when it comes to showing the shocking events that led to his death in flashback, the film doesn't pull any punches. After being presumed dead for decades, the Joker inexplicably resurfaces, and Bruce is so shaken by his return, he forces Terry to give up the Batsuit. But after the Joker directly attacks Bruce in the Batcave, Terry is determined to uncover past events and find out how exactly the Joker has seemingly returned from the grave. Back when the film was originally released in 2000, violence in movies, television, and video games were being somewhat demonized following the horrific 1999 Columbine High School shooting. This caused Warner Brothers to heavily edit the original cut of Return of the Joker to make it more kid-friendly. By popular demand, the original uncut version was later released in 2002 under the first PG-13 rating that was ever given to an animated Batman film, which made it somewhat shocking for its time. But the shock value isn't what makes this film great. Return of the Joker fills in many of the gaps between the events of the original animated series and Batman Beyond while bringing a well-crafted mystery story to the table. It goes without saying that it puts together another great voice cast, with Kevin Conroy returning as Bruce Wayne, Mark Hamill in one of his greatest turns as the Joker, and Will Friedle of Boy Meets World fame playing Terry McGinnis. All this and more is what makes Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker another must-watch.
It wasn't a popularity contest.
Sitting at number 3 is 2010's Batman Under the Red Hood. This standalone film is based on the acclaimed 2005 comic book storyline Under the Hood, written by Judd Winnick, which marked the surprising return of Jason Todd, the second Robin, who was infamously killed off in the comic books in 1988 after a poll was conducted to fans, and they clearly made their voices heard. Jason Todd has gone down in history as a character that was so unpopular that it was the fans who chose his cruel fate. And for nearly 20 years, it was pretty much common knowledge that Jason Todd was part of that group of comic book characters that were deader than a doornail and would never be brought back to life. However, his resurrection was teased in a stunning moment from the fantastic 2002 Hush story arc, where Batman was seemingly confronted by his old ally, but it turned out to be Clayface in disguise. However, the real Jason Todd did eventually resurface in Gotham during the events of Under the Hood, but not as the energetic young man who was once Robin. Batman Under the Red Hood is a terrific and intense adaptation of that story, and was one of the first animated Batman films that truly pushed the boundaries of its PG-13 rating to bring us a much more mature story. It also does a great job at setting up the plot with a prologue that recreates the grisly death of Jason at the hands of the Joker. In the years since, Jason's death has haunted Batman as one of his greatest failures, and when Jason does come back as a crazed and relentless vigilante, not only is he seeking his revenge on the Joker, but he also wants Bruce to feel guilty for having never killed the Joker himself. The awesome voice cast features Bruce Greenwood as Batman, Jensen Ackles as Jason Todd, Neil Patrick Harris as original Robin Dick Grayson, now as Nightwing, and John DiMaggio, most famous for his role as surly robot Bender from Futurama, turning in a great performance as the Joker that grabs elements from the Mark Hamill and Heath Ledger versions. Batman Under the Red Hood remains to be one of the greatest animated Batman films ever made, but there are two more that slightly edge it out.
So disappointing.
Coming in at number 2 is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. In 1986, writer and artist Frank Miller changed the face of Batman with his acclaimed graphic novel, The Dark Knight Returns, which took place in a dystopian future that forces a 55-year-old Bruce Wayne to come out of superhero retirement and fight dangerous gang members, some old adversaries, and even the Man of Steel himself. The complex storytelling also allowed the medium of comic books to evolve from silly kid stuff to more adult-oriented subject matter. For years, rumors swirled that the book would be adapted into a live-action feature, but I think the eventual animated film proved to be the perfect fit. This is one of, if not the single greatest direct adaptation of a graphic novel ever made. Sure, it helps that the source material is compelling in and of itself, but it's extremely rare to have a film version not only perfectly capture the spirit of its source, but maybe even improve upon it in spots. Now, I could go on all day about how much I adore this film, but I've actually done that already. So if you'd like to find out more about why this is almost my favorite animated Batman film of all time, make sure to seek out my full review of it in the DVD Shelf Movie Reviews.
I believe you.
And finally, coming in at number 1 is Batman: Mask of the Phantasm from 1993. The first ever full-length animated Batman movie, and to this day, still the greatest. Of course, it's another spot on this list that ties in with Batman the Animated Series, but that's just a testament to the high quality that came out of that era. Originally released in theaters on Christmas Day in 1993, lackluster marketing, limited screenings, and low ticket sales forced it out of theaters only a couple weeks later, which is a damn shame since it's just as good, if not arguably better, than any of the live-action Batman films of that time, and it certainly has a cinematic look and an epic story that belonged on the big screen. A mysterious vigilante has surfaced in Gotham and is picking off criminals one by one in rather brutal ways, but Batman is getting all the blame. In order to find out who's behind this vicious killing spree, the Dark Knight must uncover the connections between these victims, and he may even have to reach way back into his own tragic past for more answers. Batman: Mask of the Phantasm is a near-perfect Batman film, be it live action or animation. Now that could just be my nostalgia talking, especially since I was lucky enough to actually see the film in a theater when I was a kid, but I feel like it's a pretty common opinion that this is still the best animated Batman movie ever made, and the fact that it's from the same core group that created Batman the Animated Series, and that it features the iconic voices of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, among others, only cements the fact that this movie should belong at the very top of anyone's list of favorite animated Batman films. And just like with The Dark Knight Returns, I've already exhaustively reviewed this film in an early episode of the DVD Shelf Movie Reviews, so make sure to check it out if you'd like to know more about its history and what makes it the greatest animated Batman film of all time.
This madness ends now.
Well, that'll about do it for this episode of the DVD Shelf Top Spots. Thanks for joining me today as I counted down my top 10 animated Batman movies, and I've gone ahead and placed the Amazon links to all these Batman films below the video, so check those out if you're interested. Visit all of the Happy Dragon Pictures social media pages, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave us a thumbs up. We'd be ever so grateful. So I'll see you next time, but for now, these were the top spots. Hey, David Rose here. Hope you enjoyed that video because there are plenty more where that came from. And we'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and clicked on the notifications icon so you can get all of our latest content. Which reminds me, I should probably go make some.